We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 13 games of the week, DFS stacks and best bets, going deep into some key situations that we have to get right this week in fantasy football, DFS, and betting. Starting with Vikings at Lions this week, and Minnesota is currently a 7-point road favorite in this one per FanDuel Sportsbook. The total sits at just 46.5 points, the fifth highest on the main slate, but we do love to attack these teams that are just like slightly below that top tier from an ownership perspective in GPP. So nothing super notable from the sharps so far in the betting perspective, but the money line is something we rarely talk about. But what I thought was kind of interesting is that 89% of the money right now, only 43% of the bets is actually on Minnesota at minus 300. So I don't know, Reeves, no Dalvin Cook. What were your initial thoughts of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this slate as it lays out, I mean, we've got a lot of early games that are kind of more one-sided, and this one is one-sided, but at least this has a couple plays on the other side that maybe we can talk ourselves into. I mean, you've got the Bucks against the Falcons. We've got the Colts are going to hammer spot against the Texans. It's just really kind of one side. We don't have a lot of these back and forth games in the early slate. The Eagles are at the Jets. So you'll see a lot of stacks, and then later on we have the Rams against the Jaguars, who are huge favorites too. There's gonna be a lot of Bucks, Colts, and Rams stacks out there, but I don't know if there's gonna be any bringbacks. At least here there might be a bringback or two. So I chose this game to mix it up. So we'll go with that. But yeah, I mean, FanDuel did a good job this week with most of the backup running backs. I mean, they priced Alexander Madison up at 8,700, and I think that creates a nice little fulcrum point because he's at a spot where he still is arguably a really good play at 8,700 against the Lions team that has been absolutely crushed by running backs the entire season, but at least now makes you make a decision, right? He's just not an auto play at 7K or 6.5. So I like that they did that. I don't like that they left Sony Michel at 5.3, and we'll probably get to that when we get to the lineup building portion. Maybe next year we'll do this on Fridays and we'll have the full injury information, but FanDuel leaving Sony Michel out there at 5.3.
How did they get skip over that when Alexander Madison, they move all the way, basically the same price? I think he is the exact same price as what Dalvin would have been. So that's an interesting one. I guess for Madison, before we move on kind of from that specifically, if we run the sims on this game, Reeves, even at that price point, he's the number one optimal rate player. 30% of the optimal lineups still have Alexander Madison in them. So I guess the price didn't matter, but at least now we can make the decision. Before, if he was like 6,500, he would have been the best player on the slate by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, because we look at Kenny Wangu's not he's not a traditional running back in the sense where like he's going to get a lot of touches. He'll get some touches, but like he's not going to get any money touches. Like he's not going to get the goal line. He's not going to play on third downs. Even as exciting as it would be to see him get involved in the offense a little bit and what they can scheme up for him. So I mean, Madison's still going to accrue all of those money touches we like against, like I said, a team that's literally been crushed by running backs all year, except for Thanksgiving, which actually was nice because we didn't play any David Montgomery anyways. But yeah, it's just a great spot for him as a huge favorite indoors. And honestly, Alexander Madison, he does not start a lot of NFL games, but when he does, they are against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
he's to be his fifth start and his third start against the Lions. And the previous two, he's at 145 yards and 2 touchdowns and 153 yards and a touchdown. Early in the season, he started one of these in this season against Lions. He had 32 touches in that game. So yeah, I mean, he's still a really good play still. But it does, create us with also another leverage point of, hey, we can still play this passing game if we want as well. Kirk Cousins is still, he's coming off of only his 4th game where he wasn't a top 12 fantasy scorer on the week. But all his peripheral stats are still really good. And he's, going against the Lions team that's 29th in touchdown rate allowed to opposing quarterbacks. They're 31st in yards allowed per completion. They're 30th in passing points for fantasy allowed per pass attempt. Their only saving grace is they only face 30 pass attempts per game, which is the second fewest in the league. But it's another good spot, I think, for Cousins to bounce back. And I think a lot of people might look at that early game and not want to play Cousins, right? He didn't hit against the Lions earlier in the season. But all the matchups, he still threw for 8.1 yards per pass attempt in that game. I still think it's a really good spot for him. And Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen as well. Jefferson, we don't really need to really highlight a case for him anymore. I mean, look at since Clint Kubiak said that they were going to get him more involved in the offense, he's had target shares of 31%, 29%, and 28%. That's what we love. A guy like, I feel like he's still not even priced as high as he could be.
Man, there's a ton of guys in this game that are popping the optimals right now after the sim stuff. So like Justin Jefferson still 16%, even at that price point. And then I'm sure you're going to talk about Jamal Williams at some point, but he's the third highest frequency. So I think there actually could be some chalk in this game, even though it's like not like that, I guess, of a high total. So I'm glad we're talking about this one because I think this might be like a really significant decision point on the slate overall for sure.
Yeah, and you still have Adam Thielen doing what he does. Him and Mike Evans both are basically living the same exact life that they lived last year. Not really catching a lot of passes, but they're getting in the box a lot, scoring a lot of touchdowns, and living that life. So Thielen's still living that way. And Thielen only has one game when you think about like just the context of the offense. He only has one game where he's at fewer than 20% of the Minnesota targets. Still very condensed target tree, which we like. And
he's been really like the perfect late swap guy because he's always like at least half the ownership of Jefferson. Yes. So like you get him in there, you just hope he has a touchdown. Like last week, he gets in the box twice at like 2% ownership and everything. It's like the perfect late swap guy, but the hard guy to click over Jefferson when they are pretty. I mean, they're priced pretty similar. They're only $400 apart on FanDuel, so that's definitely an interesting group as well. Yeah. So
and then on the Lions side, I mean, obviously the big standout is Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift. I mean, we're recording this at 2:30 on a Thursday. The latest news is that he seems pretty doubtful to play. That was just a couple minutes ago. I saw across the line that he seems like a longer shot to play. So I mean, you really have Jamal Williams, and anytime that we've had a time for Jamal Williams to kind of play and accrue backfield touches, he's been really solid. Now, granted, previous versions were in the Green Bay offense. This is the Detroit offense.
Sure.
But Dan Campbell has shown that he's going to be run heavy no matter what. Like they're going to run the football a lot. And this offense is basically predicated on giving the ball to their backs. And Jamal Williams can catch the football. He came in on Thanksgiving and had 5 catches. They weren't for a ton of yards, but the fact that he is involved in the passing game and can catch football still gives us a little bit of a grasp of a floor. I think we'll see, Jamar Jefferson and, Godwin and Ngwabuke still get some touches. But I think that Jamal Williams still is going to accrue basically the lion's share. No pun intended on that. That was totally not intended.
That was sharp, Reeves. I know you didn't do that on purpose, but I would write that one down if I was you. It's pretty good.
And he's going to be playing against this Vikings team that we talked about. Last week, we didn't know Elijah Mitchell was going to play it, but we talked about this spot against this Vikings defense, right? They're missing so many pieces. Michael Pierce and Danielle Hunter still probably aren't going to play. We'll see if Dalvin Tomlinson comes off the COVID list and can play, but they are 31st in EPA against the run. They just are not stopping the run at all this season. And the Vikings are the Lions are still going to run the football. That's what they do. So I think that, Jamal Williams obviously is a really good kind of a floor play at his price. I think he's really, really a really sound play. And if you get a touchdown at these price points at FanDuel, like you're just really, really sitting pretty. I don't know if people are going to get all the way down to Josh Reynolds again. He did run another route on 85% of the dropbacks on Thanksgiving, caught like the long touchdown pass to kind of start it off. I don't know how far we'll get down there, but he's another option you can kind of get cute with. I don't know if we'll get there, but he does exist. The one guy I think to outright avoid is Hawkinson. I mean, the Vikings have absolutely crushed tight ends this season. They're third in the NFL in catch rate allowed to tight ends. They've allowed just a 1.6 touchdown rate to tight ends. George Kittle just had 1 catch for 13 yards against them. Mark Andrews 5 for 44. Dalton Schultz 2 for 11. Hawkinson himself had just 2 for 22. So they've been pretty good against tight ends. They used Pat Pete to guard George Kittle last week, which was pretty interesting. But he's going to be out, it looks like, this week, so they won't be able to do that with Hawkinson. But they didn't do that in the first game. But yeah, I think that maybe we were looking at Jamal Williams and maybe a little bit of Josh Reynolds if we want to get really cute, but I don't know if we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I never really know what to do with some of these Detroit wide receivers anyways. It's like pick your poison, but the ceiling isn't going to be that high just because, they're not going to have a high team total basically ever. Like we were attacking this Minnesota defense like through the middle of the field. They're bad they're basically bad everywhere in the passing game in terms of defending. But man, it is Jared Goff, and it is not a lot of appeal here overall. I don't know if I'll be stacking this one up completely, but I do like the mini stacks. Even if you didn't even want to bring it back with anyone on Detroit, I think it's totally fine to run out Justin Jefferson and Alexander Madison together and just hope to capture like a large majority of the touches on that offense overall. So anything else on this game before we build a team?
No, I think that's pretty much it here.
Okay, perfect. I do want everyone to know some exciting news, I guess, on the channel. We're going to be actually starting a new YouTube channel. So YouTube channel number 2. So we're going to have some more clips and guest stuff over there, some exclusive picks every single week. So I could definitely use you guys' help to build that thing up. There's a link in the description. I'll take you right to it. There's probably a live link that's pinned in the chat also right now, but I would appreciate some help with that. And let's go ahead and build that team, Reeb. So this is the Listener League. We have another Listener League this year, per usual, or this week, per usual. It is a 165-person Listener League. They did make it a little bit smaller since we haven't been filling it up every week. So that's interesting, but it's still $5, still rake-free, 3 max. So let's see if we were to stack this one up. Do you want to be on the Cousins side of this one, Reebs, I would imagine?
Yeah, so we can play Cousins, and let's just play both receivers and see if we can, because it's a 165-person field. Let's go crazy.
I like it. I like it.
You know, if it's gonna be that small, like that's when you say like
1650. It's a little bit bigger. It's 1650. Sorry.
1650.
Yeah, I probably said that wrong.
Oh man, I thought you said it's like 165. Let's go crazy for that.
All right.
But yeah, that's you're not gonna play Josh Reynolds unless you get some real large field stuff.
Yeah, so I guess my biggest question is, do we want to bring it back with Jamal on the other side of this just to get some salary saving?
65. Let's use his 65 and just see what we have to play with.
Cool. All right, so we still have 6K or so the rest of the way on this one. You could probably add one more to this. Like Kirk is one of those guys that I don't hesitate to even triple with, like adding Conklin to that, or even adding Madison in this case. But I don't think we have to start there for sure. Is there any other guys that you're, I guess, especially bullish on so far this week?
Not really in this game particularly, but before you force me to, just go ahead and throw in Dolphins defense.
Let's go. You know the drill at this point, man. It's not for me. It's for the people watching. It's a lot harder to figure out where we're at right now if we don't have a defense in there. So yeah, Dolphins against Giants, no issues there.
So plug in Dolphins. They're at home too. You know, we will get them in at home.
Yep.
So let's go with a mini I like that you possibly can check out in another video that we will have on the site. Let's play Marquis Brown and Freiermuth. And Freiermuth is questionable. He did practice yesterday, so keep in mind if he doesn't play, we'll have to pivot and go to like the island of Foster Moreau. But we'll play Hollywood and Freiermuth in this one.
Freiermuth is 5,400, man. A touchdown score. He's been scoring almost every week, I think, and they just haven't moved his price.
5 touchdowns his past 5 games.
Yeah. I like that.
You get a little bit of the matchup, too, against the Ravens. So let's see.
I like that. So that's 6,800 the rest of the way. So we still have a ton of salary to work with. We could probably even jam in one of these elite wide receivers if we wanted to. If we wanted to go that Mixon or Eckler route, I think this would be totally fine. Or, I mean, just adding Madison to this, I think would make some sense also. But I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I don't know how much money we would have left to fill that flex, right? Like,
to say you're right. It is probably just out of reach. So if we even played Madison, we had 5K in that last spot. So we probably do want to move down a tier. I guess if we wanted to get crazy, I think this Washington and Las Vegas game could end up being relatively popular, but we'll see. Josh Jacobs is 7K.
I almost decided to put this one on there, but I figured there's really only 2 plays that we're going to talk about in that game that I care about, and I figured we'd get to him here.
Okay.
So I was already thinking we'd get to Gibson in the flex. He's going to be super chalky. He's going to be the chalky guy.
Okay.
So we'll put him in the flex because he's a 4 p.m.
So 7,500 the rest of the way if we just threw him in the running back slot for now. So that's basically Cordero Patterson, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, like tons of room here for sure. So is there, I guess, a guy of those that you would prefer?
Yeah, I think the guy I like here that I think is going to really get overlooked and lost in the sauce this week, I don't know if he'll come up on TJ's talking points and all his leverage points, is James Conner at 7,300, because he's going to play his first game with Kyler Murray as the feature back. And that's, I feel like that game might go overlooked a little bit. Plus the upside of just having Kyler back, if that offense comes out and is really kind of optimal at his price range. We know he's got touchdown equity. He's been catching the football the past 3 games. Chase Evans is gonna be out, so I feel like he's gonna be pretty under-owned this weekend.
I like that one. I haven't really considered. I guess the positive is that they held Kyler out probably a week later than when he could have come back, and then they went right into the bye, right? So he should be, I mean, as healthy as he's been in weeks. So hopefully he comes back and we can kind of get things back on track for the Cardinals. But I like the Connor call. I don't think a lot of people are going to go that way. But even just looking at the Sims, Reeves, 5th highest frequency this week. James Conner at 7,300. So you're all over the crab so far. So I like it. Let's move on. Game number 2. We have Chargers at Bengals. Cincinnati's currently a 3-point home favorite per FanDuel Sportsbook. The over-under is sitting at 50.5, tied for the highest on the slate with Tampa Bay and Atlanta. 74% of the bets are still already on the over in this one. So, Reeves, can we expect this one to shoot out, you think?
Maybe. I mean, the Chargers, they got to give it to us, right? Like, we don't know what Chargers team we're going to get any week. It's either all or nothing with them. We're getting, like we talked about a couple weeks ago with Herbert, how he's been like the ultimate like GPP bro quarterback because he either finishes as like the QB1 or like the QB18 every week.
Right.
So what will we get this week? It's hard to tell because the Bengals are a team that really aren't going to blitz a lot. They're going to try to get home with 4. So that has swerved a little bit into like where Herbert has thrived, but then the Broncos didn't do that last week, and it didn't help at all. Broncos didn't blitz him at all last week, and he was just bad, just downright terrible. So it's an interesting matchup here because the FanDuel for the first time, it's the first time, and it is week 13, they have priced Joe Mixon over 8K. The first time.
What a world, man.
Yeah, and then not only did they take him over 8K, he went to 9-4. But he scored a touchdown in 8 straight games. He's got multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games. The Chargers have allowed a rushing touchdown in 7 straight games. That's the longest streak in the league. So it does seem like an optimal spot for Joe Mixon. I will say with hesitancy, though, I like to look at like these team splits and their touchdowns. The past 3 weeks, the Bengals have 9 offensive touchdowns and 7 are rushing. Prior to that, it was 21 passing touchdowns to 6 rushing touchdowns. I always talk about how these things shift, right? In a season,
Sure.
You don't make it through where a team just is dominant, really, and like has like 80% of the touchdowns come through the air. It's very rare it happens. So Mixon's hot streak also coincides with like that regression finally happening. So we might see that thing start a little bit. The other thing with the Chargers is if you look at their season-long stats, they're terrible against the run. But since they've come out of this bye, they have now shifted. They're actually are second in the NFL in loaded box frequency. They're trying to stop the run. They were 31st in the NFL prior to the bye week. We talked about this ad nauseum throughout the course of the season, right? They want to invite you to run. They're trying to, not give up big plays to the air. They've actually shifted and they're trying to stop the run. Now, like I said, they still a lot of rushing touchdowns, 7 straight games, but they have been from an efficiency stance a lot better against the run since the bye. So maybe that just helps a little bit if they devote their resources to stop the run. But here's the problem. If you devote your resources to stop the run against the Bengals, they can easily just go 3 wide on you.
Right. That was going to be my first question, right? Because we talked about them at, like you said, the whole year about like they really just don't want to give up that deep ball. They're the second best team in the league in terms of QBR against the deep ball. Do you think like with their new, I guess, like is there anything to like them kind of changing that scheme a little bit so now they are a little bit more susceptible to the deep ball? Because no one's going to play Jamar Chase, I feel like, this week again.
Yeah, so if you look at some of their splits, like if you look at just their season-long wide receiver splits, they look like they're awesome still. But since they're bye the past 4 weeks, they're more middle of the pack. And we've seen receivers start to have some good games against them. Devontae Smith had 100 yards and a touchdown. Chase Claypool had 93 yards. Devontae Smith had 100 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson had 143 yards against them. Because they're pulling guys in to stop the run, they're starting to give up more things downfield since they've come out of the bye. So we'll see how they approach defending the Bengals team, because now that the Bengals offensive line has kind of come alive a little bit here and they're starting to play some smash mouth football, this now is the dealer's choice. Like, how do you defend them now? This was like the missing link for the Bengals. Because now if they're able to go game script sensitive or game approach sensitive to how teams are defending them and able to just, we'll run it on you. Yep. Now, what do you do? Because they'll just go 3 wide, right? They can just go 3 wide on you if you want to stop the run, and then they'll open up. I mean, it is kind of a conundrum here now for teams defending the Bengals, and it could be trouble. We don't know going in how teams are going to defend them, so it is kind of a crapshoot for fantasy football. But it also makes them kind of almost an ironclad offense to be attached to in some capacity, because they're going to be good in all assets, right? So
yeah, this is like almost like kind of the inverse in some ways of the Minnesota and Detroit game that we talked about. So if you haven't checked out that video, definitely do that next. But I'll say this, like, is it like Mixon versus Eckler? Like you said, the prices haven't been as close yet. Both of these guys are being used as bell cows at this point of the year. So like there's not a lot of bell cows standing at this point, but they're both looking pretty good in the Sims right now. But the guy, as we kind of transition over to LA, that I wanted to get your take on was actually Keenan Allen, because we're giving away, I don't know if you know this, Reeves, we're giving away a giant Keenan Allen photo this week. So I'll show it on screen right now for you guys to see this. But yeah, so basically if you check out my Twitter, you'll be able to get in on that giveaway. And we're actually going to be doing this. I'm trying to think of the exact day I'll be giving it away. But just go to my Twitter. It's a pinned tweet. Pretty easy. You just have to like and retweet the tweet. Fill out the Pristine Auction form. Obviously, this all comes from Pristine Auction. And then you have to sub to the new YouTube channel. And then you'll be entered to win that giant Keenan Allen thing, which I think is pretty sweet. But yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on that side of the ball in this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that brings good touchdown fortune to Keenan Allen because he only
Right?
has 2 touchdowns on the year
Yeah.
and only 4 end zone targets, but he's been a target succubus again. I mean, he's got double-digit targets in 5 straight games. The only thing that's really hurt him is that he's just not scoring touchdowns, on FanDuel. The Bengals are more susceptible in the middle of the field than in terms of downfield stuff too, so it does kind of fit the corollary of where we would want to play him. I think it's a good matchup for him.
Mm.
Same thing with Austin Eckler. I mean, the Bengals are a team, like he said, they don't try to give up a lot of big stuff. It's why they've given up production to slot receivers, tight ends, and running backs. Running backs especially have really damaged them. They're 30th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs. So definitely a good spot for Eckler. He only has more than 12 rushing attempts in one of his past 6 games.
That's true.
Just really doing it a lot through the air too as well.
Almost like the old like Kamara role, right, where we'd see it almost like split directly down the middle. But man, that was like still super valuable for fantasy because he was still getting all of the high equity touches around the goal line, right? So yeah, Eckler, like if you're just looking at his box score, you'd be like, oh, okay, like maybe his volume isn't as crazy as it seems, but he's getting all the stuff that matters.
Yeah, touchdowns especially.
Yeah, that too.
he's got 7 rushing touchdowns and 7 receiving touchdowns, which is pretty wild. And it's just really like the Chargers have just kind of really froze us out of Big Mike, man. Like he's just not getting the overall volume. He hasn't seen 20% of the team targets in any of his past 6 games. They're not taking any downfield shots at all. They've become like a really low ADOT team. And we don't really have to chase. Like it's different when we're playing guys like T Higgins weekly because all the peripherals are lining up, right?
Yep.
Like with Mike, there's just no peripherals that tell us like he's a smash. Like he's just not getting a lot of targets. Where are the air yards? Where are these things? They just evaporated.
It's crazy because of how much success they were having, right? Like, how do you just completely abandon something that's working that well? Because like we all thought that it might like come back. He was a little bit banged up for a little bit too. There's all these like excuses you could make for why this wasn't working, right? But it just really never came back.
My co-host on the Sharp Angles podcast, Dan Pizzuta, believes it's because they've had to use him as a strictly deep threat because they have no other deep threats on the roster. Like they have no other speed. They have no other wide receiver speed or downfield options. So they've had to use him in that capacity. Because Josh Palmer's been playing more snaps, and Josh Palmer's not that guy. So as Josh Palmer's been playing more snaps, they've had to use Mike Williams to just go downfield and run guys off. But because Mike Williams isn't necessarily like a burner as a downfield guy, he's more of a clasher, like a 50-50 jump ball winning guy. It's hurt him because he's not a separator, right? So he's not getting open on those routes either. So it's hurt him from getting those targets, and it's removed him from getting like those intermediate targets that in the beginning of the year existed when he was in the quote unquote like Michael Thomas role, the Joe Lombardi Michael Thomas role. So I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it inherently does make some sense because the Chargers just don't have they have no other vertical player on this team. So it does stink that he's been kind of pigeonholed and kind of archetyped into that role. Once again, here we are with Big Mike, but there's just no targets for him. Like, where are the targets? Where's the things for us to latch onto? Where's the meat on the bone for us?
I'm with you. It's a weird. This game's kind of weird, Reeves. Like I think there's like some stuff to latch onto here, but you can poke some holes in a lot of these guys, and the prices are very expensive. One of the prices that stood out, at least, like I mean, if we want to go back to T Higgins, he just got there for us. He's 6,600. He's like one of the cheapest guys in this game that we could go to potentially. Like I don't know, man. Like Eckler's 9K. Mike Williams obviously is still in that price range. I guess Mike Williams versus T Higgins. If we're trying to figure out one of those guys to go to, it's probably T Higgins, right? Like I don't know. Maybe I have bias because of last week.
Well, I mean, people think like Higgins, we were just chasing him like Robbie Anderson. Higgins was actually good prior to like he was giving us like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 fringe weeks. He just hadn't given us the ceiling weeks. It wasn't like we were blindly just chasing air yards,
which we will do at times.
Like being a usable player. I actually do have one intriguing guy to float by you here.
Okay,
and it's Tyler Boyd. Because of the way the defense of the Chargers is structurally set up, they give up a lot of interior and stuff to tight ends, but the Bengals have already shown us like they're not going to give CJ Uzome a lot of targets.
Right.
He's had these 2 spike weeks, but he doesn't get a lot of targets ever. So is there some signal here like this could be a matchup that Tyler Boyd can take advantage of? He's the guy that really isn't our type of guy, but I do wonder if it is a spot for him to kind of 2 weeks ago he had 29% of the team targets. I do wonder if this is another zone-based defense like the Raiders were, that it could be another spot for him to kind of be like de facto tight end. When people look at like Chargers versus tight ends, it might be a spot to say, well, this could be Tyler Boyd getting those targets in that area of the field.
I'll tell you how I would use the Boyd play. It would be one of those teams that has one of the chalkier stacks late. So maybe you end up attacking some of the Rams players, whatever it may be, and you take a shot on Tyler Boyd with your 1 p.m. lineup. Maybe it's a mini stack with Austin Eckler or Keenan Allen or something like that, because you're automatically going to differentiate from the chalk in this game with a unique piece. And if you just happen to hit on that one piece of Cincinnati that hits, and then all the Burrow stacks are completely dead because they've got Jamar Chase, they've got even Joe Mixon, that sort of thing. I think that's how you separate. So it's like all this stuff to me is based on what type of lineup they would fit in. That would be kind of how I would approach using Boyd, like someone that we probably wouldn't really play, but I mean, he's going to be sub 5%. So I think that's how I would use him for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, he's not typically, he's a guy you'd play on the other site, but he is kind of a guy that's intriguing, I think, for stacking this game.
The other site. I love when you say that. Speaking of the other site, we're going to build a FanDuel team today. This is a Joe Hulk Show listener league. But before we do that, I want everyone to pause this video. Let me know in the comments your favorite Week 13 stack. We want to hear from you guys. Let's build a game stack around Cincinnati and LA Chargers for this one. So we want to go the Herbert side or the Burrow side. Reeves, this is your team.
Yeah, I think with them being road dogs, we go the Herbert side. And, obviously it's boom or bust, but, that's what we're here for.
I like it. So we going Keenan on this one? Have we given up on Mike Williams, you think? Or is he one of those guys
that would fit on a boat? I don't think we've given it up, but like I said, there's just not a lot of peripherals.
What's the upside? Yeah.
Say, like, I want, like, they're not giving us a reason to play him.
Sure.
Basically, is what I'm saying. Like, it's really, if you want to play Mike Williams, you're being contrarian against everything, right? You're just playing him to play him. There's nothing that they're giving. There's like no matchup advantage. There's no usage side things from the Chargers. Like, you're really just chasing. So, I mean, you could get there. I mean, he's still out there running routes. So you could get there. But I mean, as far as like stacking this game, I think we would go Herbert, Keenan, and Eckler.
I was just going to say, I think this is a build we would put Eckler on. And then I think that the decision here is if we really want to blow everything at the running back position and bring it back with Mixon, or maybe we try out Boyd on the other side of these stacks as well. I would say we probably don't have the salary to do Mixon or Chase, but I think either of those bring backs would be okay on the Cincinnati side with T or
Let's just see what it looks like with Boyd then, because we brought him up, and I like to at least build. I always like to build the lineups of things we talk about.
I love
the listeners don't have to do it, but it at least gives them a
anyone that's watching this later in the week, just keep in mind that we did build this on Thursday. These are just kind of ideas how to use this stuff that we're talking through for the specific game. If you did want to build around it in DFS, like, this is something that you should definitely be using your own touch on throughout Sunday and whatnot. So defense, Reeves, do we want to, I guess we played the Chargers, or no, we played on the Dolphins on the last one. I think the Chargers are reasonable on the other side as well, but is there a cheaper defense this week that you've been kind of throwing into placeholder teams? Like, I've been kind of defaulting to the Chargers for the most part.
Yeah, mostly just the Dolphins is as low as I've been going.
Okay, let's just toss them in there for now. Again, these are not lineups that people are going to be trolling out anyways, I would think.
I think they're going to be the most popular, so you might want to get away from in tournaments too. I mean, it might maybe a week where you just pay up for like the Colts or something.
Sure. Okay. 6,400 the rest of the way with 4 slots left. So what are you thinking?
All right, so let's do a mini from one of our previous videos that you can check out. And let's do Jefferson and Jamal Williams.
Nice. I like that. I was going to say maybe Madison on this team, but I think I like the mini with Jefferson and Williams a lot, just because that really helps with the price. Like, I think Jamal is going to be really popular, obviously, at that price point, but just adding Jefferson to it, I think might differentiate it a little bit. So we have a lot of 1 p.m. players here, all 1 p.m. players. So in the 4 p.m. game, we have a tight end to fill. We also have a flex. So tight end wise, we could try and figure out, I probably don't have the salary to put Kittle in this. We could go with your boy Freiermuth again, try and see where that leads us.
I think we've got enough salary to probably just run another 4 p.m. mini, and we can do the island of Foster, Moreau, and Gibson. And
we could. I don't hate
we've
that.
Got a lot of correlation.
God. This Gibson, this Foster Moreau thing is one of the ones that's going to absolutely kill me this week, I think. But Gibson, that fits perfectly.
He actually on FanDuel, I don't think will be as chalky as the other site.
You could be right.
I think on FanDuel, because you have Freiermuth right above him, right? And we're in touchdown or bust territory of these tight ends, anyways.
Sure.
But I mean, I think there's a strong argument. I mean, we didn't talk about this game, but last time that Darren Waller missed a game in Week 7, he played 100% of snaps, didn't come off the field. He caught a touchdown in the game. He's got, some end zone equity. So, I mean, it's a touchdown or bust play on FanDuel, really.
Yeah, that was the
He's
move
gonna be
that I
on the
wasn't
field.
willing to make in that week that you're talking about, but a lot of sharp people did take that chance. So let's go ahead and keep this thing moving, Reeves. Game number 3, we have Steelers at Ravens. Baltimore is a minus 4.5 point road favorite per FanDuel Sportsbook. This game features the third lowest over-under on the slate at just 44 points, which was a bit surprising to me. Seems like the sharps and the public seem to be in on the Ravens here, even on the road. But where would you land on this one, Reeves?
Yeah, I mean, I've been shorting the Steelers kind of all season, so but I can see. So this game is not going to be for the faint of heart if you're playing this game.
Sure.
This is a 4 p.m. Could be terrible. This game could be 16-10. It could be 13-10. It could be terrible, or maybe it gets in the mid-20s.
Right.
I mean, the Ravens are a defense that give up huge plays. They're very, kind of all over the place. They're very on and off, all or nothing in game. And then offensively, they've been terrible the last 3 weeks. There's just no way around it. I mean, they have 3 offensive touchdowns on 35 drives. Lamar didn't start one of those games, but they've been awful. But the Steelers defense is really just coming into this game, just hanging on a thread right now. TJ Watt's not going to play in this game. Joe Hayden looks like he might miss this game. They have been absolutely getting steamrolled the past couple weeks. The Chargers put up 41 points on them. The Bengals put up 41 points on them. This defense is not the Steelers defense that you grew up with.
Right.
Have experience. Like they have too many injuries, too many guys in the lineups. They just are not playing well. So there is some opportunity for maybe some flop lag for the Ravens offense to get some of this early season spark when Lamar was averaging 9 yards per pass attempt and it, has been bad. So this is going to be an all or nothing game. Like this is what I like about this game from a tournament perspective, though, and why I wanted to talk about it and build lineups around it is because it could be gross, man. This could be awful, but it's not a catch.
you won't see. So if we run the Sims on this, runthesims.com/Holga, 10% off, all that stuff, but you don't see really any of this game in the Sims, right? It probably has a decent amount to do with like the lower total also, but like we see some of these games end up being like really unique pieces that you can build around, right? Like put chalk around a skinny stack of this game or a mini stack of this game, and if you end up hitting on just this game not being gross, right, you can really differentiate in that way. Or maybe the whole slate's gross again, Reeves. Like it's I guess one of those years where the scoring is down across the board. We saw Michael Leone take down the Thunderdome last week with a Big Ben stack. So if the slate is completely gross, sometimes finding just a different game than the field that doesn't completely go nuts when all the chalk is really condensed, like that is kind of what we're trying to do here, Reeves, in tournaments, is be different. So I don't mind this stack. I don't mind this game. I just think this is one of those ones I'd want to build the best plays around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is keep in mind like what fields you're placing like these lineups in.
Exactly.
Know when you don't need 200 points to win a tournament.
Right.
Yep.
Like yeah, I should preface that the Leone one I'm talking about, it's 50 people, right? So it's very small. That's the stuff that a lot of the people that watch these I think play anyways. Just because I think those are the best ones.
People are like, this lineup didn't score this many points. It's like, yeah.
What does that matter? It's not built for that.
Well, remember 2 weeks ago when you won your tournament and Jonathan Taylor had 50 points. Yeah. You can't win a large field tournament without Jonathan Taylor, but small field.
Yeah, and even the lineup that I built that was like a complete onslaught of that game, it wasn't built to even beat probably 1,000 people. It was built to beat like 100 or less, right? So you got to think about which types of lineups you're building and what it suits, right? So I think that's something that like we'll talk about that, and people just probably like roll their eyes at us at this point, Reeves. But like honestly, like there's tons of edges left, and that is one of the biggest ones. Build lineups for specific contests. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean most people that I talk to that get into like single entry stuff or 3-max stuff, they still get into these tournaments where you still need to shoot for like having 180 to 200 point upside, right? Like so you still have to construct your teams that way. People think it's like no,
the single entry part of it is completely irrelevant, right? And I know that's the point you're making, right? The field size is what matters. Doesn't matter if it's 3-max, doesn't matter if it's single entry. Like you could play like any of these. Like there's tons of single entry contests that will have 5,000 people in them. You're still not building it like a single entry. You're building it like a 5,000 person tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
correct.
All right.
Correct.
Anything else in this game stand out?
Yeah, I mean, well, so there are some pieces there, like I said. I mean, well, the Steelers, like I said, they've been getting absolutely steamrolled. They've been awful against the run, but if obviously we don't want to play any of these running backs, Lamar's is the best running back still the Ravens have. Devontae Freeman's been solid, but when he doesn't score a touchdown, he's been pretty worthless. So he's basically been a touchdown or bust fantasy option. You saw it touch Latavius Murray 17-8, but I am interested in Hollywood here, because what's happened is the deep ball's dried up in a similar capacity that's happened for Jamar Chase, right? You've got this player that just lived on deep targets early in the season and thrived on connecting on those. And variance kind of now has swung in the other direction because they are low leverage targets. And we've seen that happen with Jamar Chase. And we've seen that happen with Hollywood Brown. The past 3 games Lamar Jackson's played, he's 3 of 18 passing on throws 15 yards or further downfield. Previously, he had connected on 47%, which was top 8 in the league. But Hollywood is still just getting jammed with targets. Look at his targets each game. Even last week when the deep ball was there, he still caught 8 of 10 targets. They just moved the targets in. He has 14, 12, 13, and 10 targets his past 4 games. 32% of the team targets over the past 4 games he's played. They've actually relegated Bateman on Sunday night. He only ran a route on 58% of the team dropbacks. That's
surprising.
To kind of like stump some of his like little buzz that he's been going, that he had going for him. I mean, Rashad Bateman's had a very different NFL season on the field than NFL Twitter has perceived it.
Sure,
it's still been very positive, but he's just not getting a lot of targets and they're not using him a lot. He's been good when they do throw to him. And I think that's what's popping. And people are like, well, he should get more targets. But the Ravens have not leaned into that at all. They are still just throwing the ball to Hollywood and Mark Andrews. That's all they're doing. The interesting thing about Mark Andrews, and we would never fade Mark Andrews because of like any matchup or anything, but he's never scored a touchdown against the Steelers. They are only allowing a 2.7% touchdown rate to opposing tight ends. That's 4th. That's not going to move us off of anything on Andrews, but it does. And circling back to the deep ball thing, before I got off track there as I'm prone to.
That's right. I drove us even further off the bridge on that one, so it's all good.
Well, the Steelers are actually bad against deep ball. We said they might not have Joe Hayden here, so maybe we can get some regression to kind of kick back in, right? For Hollywood, they're 27th in completion rate allowed on those targets, and they've allowed a touchdown on those targets in each of the last 3 games. So maybe we can catch a little Hollywood flop lag. If you check out another stack in another earlier video, we did run a Hollywood mini in there too as well.
Yeah, and we know that like it's a good matchup on the other side too for deep balls. Baltimore gives up a ton of big plays, like you said, but Big Ben's not pushing it down the field, so it doesn't even matter. Before we build a lineup, I am going to bug you guys one last time to take 30 seconds out of your day to subscribe to the new YouTube channel, but also if you want to help me move this show forward, ratethispodcast.com/The Joe Holka Show. It would mean the absolute world. Building up the podcast is not easy, so I could appreciate anything that you guys can do on the ratings and review side of things. Reeves, let's go ahead and build a lineup here. This one will be, I guess if you choose it, will be in the listener league at FanDuel.com/Holka. So we're talking through Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I assume we're not playing Big Ben, but I mean, I'll leave that up to you, man. It was good enough for Leone last week.
Yeah, it was. No. Yeah, listen, this game was so exciting that it just
everyone fell asleep and I had to start over. Yeah,
just froze it out. And take that as a sign for everybody, building the lineup.
That hasn't happened all year, knock on wood. So yeah, maybe that's the sign that this game is just a complete dumpster. Who knows?
But yeah, we would start with Lamar, Lamar and Hollywood, and then we can run it back with, I believe, Chase Claypool. Deontay Johnson also fine, but we talked about with this Ravens defense, we didn't talk about the Steelers side at all, but they're a complete pass funnel. They just nuke the run, but they give up chunk plays in the passing game when they do give up plays. And we know Deontay's going to get his, that he lives that life. But if we're chasing a chunk play, it's going to be, from Claypool. And he actually does have 21% of team targets each of the past 2 games, and has kind of gotten there the past 2 weeks from a yardage perspective. We just need that touchdown.
Do you have any interest in Najee at 8K? Like, he's one of those guys that's priced all the way up that I've been kind of skipping over, but not for like a super good reason, to be honest.
I mean, we talked about this particularly a couple weeks ago, and Jake came on after me and told me I was wrong about Dave Montgomery. I do not like playing running backs against the Ravens. They sell out to stop the run. They could lead to a big play, but like you've seen it even on Sunday night, they nuked the Browns running game. Like a way more elite rushing game. And the Steelers have been terrible running the football of late. And we thought this would be a problem early in the season. And we're like, oh, no, Najee's getting so much volume, it doesn't matter. But look at like Najee the past couple weeks, though. Like he got into the box against the Chargers, which saved him after one of those. It was either a block punt or pass interference. He got the 1-yard touchdown. But they have been horrendous running the football lately. And I just don't know if they're going to get anything going on the ground in this game.
Yeah, like I said, like there's really not a lot of players in the Sims right now. Najee at 8K is certainly nowhere near the top when there's a lot of decent options this week at running back. So I'm fine leaving that the way it is. We could double Lamar with Andrews, but I'm fine rolling with just the skinny stack.
We'll just go small here because this is one, if you said we want to play maybe with some chalkier items in the early games.
I'm
So
going
we
to
could
force
do
us to
that.
do one thing, though, because we haven't done this yet on the other games we've gone over. I do want to play Alexander Madison on this team. He's 8,700. He's expensive, but against Detroit, I think he's in an absolutely smash spot. So we're going to have to go with some value here. I'm going to go ahead and toss in our Dolphins defense placeholder because they're kind of a mid-range defense. There'll be some stuff throughout the week ownership-wise. I think we can make a better decision later on. So 6,300 the rest of the way. Yeah, or Sony, right? So like, yeah, if you keep an eye on that, that's a nice salary saver right there that gets you up to some studs, definitely. But 6,300 the rest of the way. Do we want to GM in Kittle on this team? I think Kittle is one of those guys that like I have weird blinders for because every time I play Kittle, he's absolutely terrible. Just paying up for tight end hasn't gone very well for Joe this year across the board. But man, no Debo, like Kittle against Seattle. I don't know. Maybe that game gets gross, but I like having that slot open at 4 p.m. because then I could always move to Freiermuth or something like that if things get weird.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's the thing about this stack in particular too. You don't even have to like this game when you can get there, but look at all the salary we have to move around if we need it.
True.
I mean, we've got tons of movement here that we have at our disposal for late swapping. So we can. So if Madison doesn't hit, we're chasing. I mean, we're already way off the beaten path, though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so if we're like pretty far off the beaten path, is there a mini stack maybe at 1 p.m. that you like where we wouldn't have to worry as much about playing some chalk? Like I think like early in the week, I think we've talked a little bit about Antonio Gibson being pretty popular on this slate. I still think that like David Montgomery, people are going to go back to that. Well, maybe people will chase the Leonard Fournette touchdowns. Jamal Williams at 1 p.m. is going to be very popular, but we already have Madison on this team. So is there a mini that you like? I'm fine running the Antonio Gibson one again if that's your preference.
I mean, as far as minis go, I think everything's kind of one-sided early. Like my favorite mini probably in the early one is like I said, if you're gonna do like Jefferson and Jamal Williams, we've done that on a couple of rosters that we've built so far, just because he's so cheap. It's funny with Leonard Fournette, we're in the same exact spot we were last week, right? Like,
yeah,
you've got Brady.
You think Brady's gonna be chalky again?
Yeah, I mean, how could he not be? I mean,
against Atlanta.
Against Atlanta, who's been so bad against opposing quarterbacks, they don't rush the passer.
It fails for people last week, and now people don't even care, man. It's the worst. Like it's literally where we're at right now. Like a couple years ago, we used to be able to just like print money with playing Brady, that like after like a flop lag game like that. So that's rough, man. But you're right. He's probably gonna be the most like popular quarterback now that I'm looking at deeper.
Yeah, Brady's gonna be super popular again, and you'll see Evans and Godwin bring backs, and we could play like one of those guys if you want to play a receiver, a Tampa Bay receiver. We could play Godwin.
We could. I think I'm trying to think of like Godwin versus Evans this week, ownership wise. Like I still think that Evans is always going to be lower though, right? I think it's always like the safer thing to go with Godwin. They're like basically the same price. Let's go with Evans just because I think that like the touchdown score, like it's easier for my brain to wrap my head around that. We could probably, we can't fit in Cordero on this team. We definitely need some salary saving the rest of the way now. So we could play Jamal. We could just play Sony as a placeholder too. But is there another running back on the cheaper side that you like besides those guys?
Did you stick Kittle on this team or no?
Kittle is for now, but he doesn't have to be.
I was going to say we could go down to either Freiermuth on the other side and run it, but it would give us 2 Steelers, or we could just go to the Foster Moreau thing again.
We could. I mean, that's the Foster Moreau thing is still totally fine, right? Because all you need is that touchdown there. And I like I said, like paying up for tight end has not gone well for Joe this year.
Well,
so
he's also another 4 p.m. player that you could blow this thing up if you had to.
Well, we got the 1 p.m. players that we have. Like we still have Madison Chalk. We have Mike Evans. So yeah, we probably need to find at least one more lower owned play at 1 p.m. I would imagine. So
we do need another one-off for sure on this team particularly because we need to know if it hits or not.
Exactly.
But the problem is it's not going to be a running back because we can't fit any of them in.
Well, we can fit in Cordero Patterson if we're willing to go to 5,400 in the flex, because then we'd have our mini with Evans and Cordero Patterson. And Patterson's not going to be owned always. He's never owned.
Yeah, he is never owned against the Bucks though. But
I mean,
right.
It's not.
I talk myself out of Cordero Patterson every week, and every week he gets there. So you're right.
We don't have to. I'm just saying it's an option. It does handcuff us a little bit if we do that, though. There's really not a ton. So is there like a guy that'd be a little bit cheaper than that at running back? So 7,400 for Cordero Patterson. We could go with like a Saquon Barkley mini. He's 7,200. We could kind of flip the build a little bit for the Raiders and just play Jacobs and Moreau together. I just feel like that's kind of negatively correlated if we need a touchdown for Moreau. So probably wouldn't go that way. David Montgomery, go back to that well again, I guess, with him failing last week, but the snaps and stuff were there. Myles Gaskin against the Giants, 6,400. That's kind of the range. unless we just go Gibson again with Moreau. Which
Yeah,
I don't think is terrible either.
it would seem like because we're so far off the chalk that you could take Gibson and play him, but
Let's do that because then 6,600 the discussion becomes if we want to play Jamal with Madison, if we wanted to play David Montgomery in that range, or we just roll it back with T Higgins and hope no one plays him again.
Yeah, I mean, we could do T Higgins as a one-off and leave Claypool in the flex.